Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We are here today to present the City We Need, which is a consensus document conceived, designed, and written by the members of the World Urban Campaign. The campaign is a platform coordinated by UN Habitat and represents around 70 institutions and networks. It is a kick-off document from partners as a contribution to the Habitat 3 conference. It will be discussed further at the World Urban Forum in Medellin, Colombia, in April 2014, so it is a living document. We have 4 speakers today. The first speaker is Mr. Nicholas Yu. He's the chair of the steering committee of the World Urban Campaign, and he will talk to you about further detailing about the World Urban Campaign. We also have Professor Eugenie Birch. She's the co-director of the Penn Institute for Urban Research and co-chair of the World Urban Campaign Steering Committee, and we'll also talk further about the city we need. Third, we have Mr. Joaquin Alpur-Tam. He's the president and founder of Slum Dwellers International, and he will talk about the advocacy role and the partners' work collaboration towards Habitat 3. And the first speaker will be Dr. Joan Clos, who is the Undersecretary General and Executive Director of UN Habitat. Dr. Clos is also the Secretary General of the 3rd United Nations Conference on Housing and Urban Development, which the General Assembly decided to convene in 2016. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Nicholas Yu.
Thank you very much, Yamina, dear co-panelists, and Dr. Clos. I would just like to very briefly introduce the origins of this document, The City We Need, why it is there, and why we think it's an important document. As Yamina said, it is work in progress. It is still a living document. We do not pretend at all that this is its final version. But the partners of the World Urban Campaign, which gathered together for the first time during the World Urban Forum in Rio de Janeiro 4 years ago, launched this campaign for several reasons, but I will only focus on one. The demographics of the world today show us that in the next 30 to 40 years, we will see the doubling of the world urban population. It doesn't take rocket science to figure out that in the next 30 to 40 years, we will most probably build more cities, more infrastructure, more housing, more basic services than has been built since the beginning of humanity. I just leave that soundbite with you. We will be building and constructing more human settlements than we have since the beginning of human history. And if we do that right, we have every hope of achieving sustainable development for everybody. If we do it wrong, we are in very, very serious trouble. And the partners that include non-governmental organizations, academia, the private sector, professionals, the media, all these partners got together in 2010 to launch this campaign because all of these partners feel very strongly that this is a very important chance that we must not miss. So basically what the partners have done is gotten together to reinforce the same message over and over and over again. We have one chance to get the future of our urban world right, and only this chance in the next 30 years. And we have to start now. So this document is an attempt, a first attempt, by the network of partners, which then chose a smaller group, a working group, to sit together and come out with what each partner thought would be an important characteristic of the city we need in order to achieve the world we want. And so this contains several principles. It contains a very short introductory paragraph. And we think that these principles can be elaborated even further to inform both the ongoing debate on sustainable development goals and in preparation for Habitat 3. And I will just close my statement there.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. Professor Eugenie Birch.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Everyone has their favorite statistic. Is that it?
That's okay. Yeah.
Everyone has their favorite statistic. You heard Nicholas's favorite statistics. I'm going to give you mine, which is the cities of the world generate 80% of the wealth, 80% of the economic growth, the economic product of the world. That gives us reason enough to be thinking that cities are extremely important, in addition to the population statistics you heard, and in addition to the fact that 60% of what we will need to be built is not yet built yet. So we have a big chance here to carry out the principles that are in this little booklet. And what are those principles? I'm not going to read them all. There are 9 of them, but let me highlight the most important ones. Number 1, urbanization is a positive force, and we need to harness it in order to promote social equality, cultural vitality, economic prosperity, and ecological security. If you just remember that, I think you're on the path to thinking about the urban world we want. We also believe and state in this particular document that the battle for a more sustainable future will be won or it will be lost in cities. And if you attach those statistics that you've heard around this table to this statement, I think you'll see what we mean. So how are we going to do that? We're going to do this through these partnerships, which we believe will be multi-sectoral. That is, public, private, non-governmental partners need to unite around the issues of providing the public goods that are needed in our cities. And what are those public goods? Well, if we think about the dialogue that is going on right now in the post-2015 discussion around the effort to have an SDG that promotes sustainable cities and human settlements, that is, the living arrangements of everyone from rural to urban, I think we will have a track which we need to follow. This track, which we need to follow, particularly in this SDG, if we promote it and we believe in it, is going to focus on the built environment. There are other tracks that will deal with sectoral issues, but the built environment needs to be incorporated in what we're thinking about as we bring the world's attention to the development issues of the future. And what do we mean by the built environment? We mean building resilient cities that are physically resilient. We've all witnessed the floods, the typhoons, the hurricanes, the earthquakes, and know what that means. We can't have that anymore as the cities are grown in the future. We need to deal with the slums and affordable housing and make sure that the billion people who are living in slums today will have a better future. We need to deal with the public realm and make sure that we lay out the streets, the parks, the open spaces that will create the sustainable city. These are the things that we are advocating in the city we need, and we hope you'll share them with us.
Thank you, Professor Birch. And Mr. Joaquin Alputa.
Thank you very much. I am a slum dweller, maybe sitting with the ED and both the friends, both the sides. They clearly lined out and told you. But I am a different person. I am coming from a slum. I am a slum dweller in India. 60% of my city, 16 million population, lives in slums who don't have a sanitation, who don't have a water. I am trying to look at, if we want to live in a city, the city without this kind of a facility, how the city can survive. You need to have streets, roads, environment, and if you have everything is gone, what is there? There's no toilet, there's no water, forget about everything. Where is the dignity? I think when we talk about 3 Ps, I am talking about 4 Ps. Partnership, building and people's participation. I am trying to say how, that is where I am working with Dr. Joan Clos, trying to see how slum dwellers can participate with you. Without slum dwellers participating, jointly working with you, you cannot sort out the problem. This is the issue of, this is a different dynamic altogether. The minute you move on to urban, the slum is different. The urban situation is different. It's not a poverty of rural and urban. When they come to urban, the total scenario changes. In the rural, you can talk about different. When you come to urban, you talk about how many million people are talking about. What is that which you are talking about? It is not the land, the city environment. If the city environment, if we don't provide the sanitation, if we don't provide water, what other you are talking about? Therefore, I think we, the slum dwellers, collect ourselves. We are telling every mayor. We are working with little more than 70 mayors in the in the African countries, and telling them, do you know your city? First we have to tell them, count them and tell them, this is the number. This is the number. 80% of the people doesn't have access to drinking water and the toilet. And where is the dignity? Forget about it. We are talking about so many things, but this thing doesn't come arise. Therefore, we, Slum Dwellers International, working in the last decade with the UN, and trying to say how people can we participate with you. We are not trying to here to demonstrate and shout and scream and say, no, we have to work together with you and work. We are the people who can design, construct, build, and we are the people who can tell about whatever is happening. We are not holding our hands out for we need something. We work together and try to see how we need to have this future city which you are talking about. Know your city means there are mayors today, hundreds of them, doesn't know the city. Doesn't know the city means they know the city as city, but they don't know how many slum dwellers are there, how they have been living there, what kind of an environment they are living. Therefore, we have to tell them, come together, let's work together, and let's solve the problem all together, not in isolation. You as a city cannot address your issues as an independent. You have to work with the people and city together, sort out the problem. That is what the message, what we are trying to see, how we work with Dr. Clos and the people are concerned, where we can sort out our own problem as a people to survive on the city.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arfutam. And now I have the great honor to give the floor to Dr. Joan Clos, Under Secretary General, Executive Director of UN Habitat, and Secretary General of Habitat Free Conference. Dr. Clos.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, surrounded by our stakeholders of the World Urban Campaign, and the private sector, academia, NGOs, united together in order to promote a new model of city, and the city that we need. This very short document, it's very clear. I think that it's presenting a set of ideas that represents the aspiration of the new model of urbanization that is needed in the future. We have been building many cities in our history, and as Nick Yu has said, just in the 30, 40 years in front of us, we are going to double the urban settings for the urbanizing population that it's growing in the world. And at the same time that we have this immense challenge, which is building cities, we know that at the global level, we have at least two other big challenges. One is climate change. And if we want to keep the planet in a range of 2 degrees, centigrade degrees, as a maximum level of heating, we need to do different things. We need to change our form of doing things. And this doesn't accept excuses. There's no leapfrogging for that. This is a real issue, and we need to do something real to address this issue. And the second big challenge is the development. or say it in another words, the poverty existing in the world, the inequalities, the lack of dignity for slum dwellers, which also is a very pressing problem of the world. It's a human problem in the most sensitive sense. And the question is that then we have three forces that are there in our immediate future that are converging. Urbanization, the need of better development, the limits of the ecosystem and the climate change. And we need to we need to elaborate a kind of mechanism in order that this process, with these very three driving forces, allow a future with dignity. And it's not easy, because, of course, you know how difficult it is to reach agreements in climate change, how difficult it is to reach agreements in development, how difficult it is to reach substantive agreements in the model of urbanization. But there's no escape way. We need to keep insisting on those issues and find out a consensus solution. And this is what we pretend in this process. The city that we need is the initiative with the private sector, with academia, with NGOs and the UN system together in order to have a platform of profound debate about this difficult challenge that we have in front of us. I am very glad for the participation of everybody, and from now we would like to extend this campaign to call more and more people to contribute to debate, because we are not going to reach a consensus, we are not going to reach a feasible methodology if a big number of stakeholders and actors, social actors, understand what is the challenge that we have in front of us. This is a very important question. There's a lot of different pressures, commercial, industrial, whatever, that go and you know, push in different directions. But we need to be centered in the issue, very clear issue, that we need a more social inclusive city. We need a better, let's say, redistributive city, where the dignity of every citizen is respected. We need a more resilient city. We need a more efficient city. We need to change the paradigm of urbanization for the rest of the 21st century. Because if we keep building cities in the old-fashioned, we are already planting the seeds of a continuing crisis, both in climate change, in lack of development, integration and dignity, and also in a very poor urbanization, which comes out with segregation, poverty, and social conflict. Then, if we want to avoid that, we need to rethink urbanization. And this is the theme that we are trying to put on the table for Habitat 3. And this is why we are calling all the stakeholders in this process, and I again thank very much your contribution to this process. And I am very glad, by the way, that Slum Dwellers International has been recently proposed as a candidature to the Nobel Peace Prize. Anyway, thank you very much, and I hope that you can explain to the world how important this issue is, and that we are on track to explain what we mean with this document. We are going to have a session today in the Ford Foundation. We are going to have a lot of activities in the World Urban Forum in Medellin in the second week of April. Then we will have different occasions, and we are heading also towards the first World Cities Day that is going to be celebrated in the 31st of October this year, 2014. Thank you very much.
The floor now is open for questions. Kindly introduce yourself and indicate to whom you would like your question to be with.
Hello.
Please come.
No, excuse me.
Oh, sorry, 1 second. Yes,
Yeah,
please.
I want to welcome you. I'm sorry, this is an organization, you're not. I want to welcome you on behalf of the United Nations Correspondent Association. My name is Evelyn Leopold, and I would love one of those little red booklets, right? Not far from you, from Habitat's headquarters, is Nairobi. And there are, when I first went to live there in '86, Kibera was a huge slum of million or 2 million, I don't know. It had no medical facilities, it had no toilets. When I looked at it not too long ago, it was in a bit better shape, but it still didn't have any basics. So my question is, what do you do with huge slums like that? And that one is known to every tourist who goes to Kenya. What do you do with huge slums like that? Before you can build cities of the future, how do you clean up in India or in Africa what is so disastrous now? And can you repeat the figure of how many slum dwellers there are in the world?
Well, the estimation now of the slum dwellers in the world is around 830 million people, following the formal definition of UN Habitat and UN DESA. And the number since the year 2000, which were around 750, it has increased, not decreased. Although in the Millennium Development Goals we have succeeded in reducing some slum dwellers population because they were able to improve their conditions, but the question is that the people who is increasing the population of the slums is bigger than the ones which are improving. And that this is what at the final outcome is, that the slum dwellers population is increasing. I think that here perhaps Joaquin can explain a little bit. Slums, it's a very complex thing because there's a lot of people, as you see, millions of people who live in there. And then we cannot just wait and expect a future solution that everything will be solved. The very important thing is to improve the conditions of the slums, because there's a lot to be done in the slums. There's a lot to be improved. And I will give the floor to you, because I think that you, on that you are very, you communicate very well the feeling. From our point of view, or from UN Habitat point of view, our strategy to fight at a big scale to the slums is consider the slums as a consequences of the urban politics and urban planning. In order to the slum at the end is not other thing than the spontaneous way of urbanization of the people. Then if we want to prevent the slum, we need to offer to the poor and to the majority of the population conditions of urban quality. That means huge planning of huge city extensions in such a way that the affordability of the land can be guaranteed. Then we are here based in a double exercise by which we need to address the problems of the slum, improve the conditions, as you have said that is happening a little bit in Kibera, but at the same time, in order to prevent at the big scale, you need to produce large affordable city extensions, without which never it's going to be a real provision of affordable housing and affordable land for the growing population. And this is very critical, and requires a change of mentality. But I think that Joaquin perhaps can add a little bit to that, and you will hear from his own voice, because he's a slum dweller. You hear, you can talk.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dr. Clos. I think what we are trying to do is, instead of talking, making the slum dwellers to work positively. Toilet, we say don't have a toilet. We ourselves collect information, gather information, and produce the toilets. We can build the toilet. Till now, I would have built more than 5 million worth of toilets throughout the slum population, all over wherever SDI is working. It's about 37 countries. We unite the people, organize the people, and tell them we can't wait for them, anybody to deliver you. You have to pull up your socks, you have to work for it, and you design and implement it. This is not only wait for something to come. This is not a very huge thing. How to improve the slum? This is not within our hand. We have started with small saving. We have billions of dollars collected from the communities, and that contribution, we go to the donor and say that this is not the money we are asking for you to begging out. This is where we want to contribute to improve our standard of life. That is where we are trying to say people's participation, community involved, and go to the mayor. Today I can go to any country like in East Africa, go to Kibera, go with the mayor. Mayor have a statistic which tells about complete Kenyan number of slum, number of people living in slum, number of people need water tap, number of people need toilets. This is where we share with them. This is no more telling that is dirty, this is not working, that is not working. We participate with them, and that's where I am joining hand with UN Habitat, telling the World Bank to say 40% of the people who are not supported with the bank need to be supported. We are asking them together with the UN Habitat and SDA together, you support us. We will try to tell you how we can improve these kind of things within a limited period. It's not indefinitely waiting for ages to come, how to get up these things. So we are on the path. Now I come from a city, Bombay. In that city today, I managed to get the total sanitation to be cleared in 5 years' time. Every time I am sitting here now, but in Bombay, I myself, the organization building 100 toilets in a given situation in 60 settlements. This is what we are trying to tell every other country to follow. Very recently, the mayor and the community traveled to India to look at it, how to do that, how we can continue to do. Have a dialogue, have involve the people. People's participation, particularly women's participation. You work with the women, you work with the whole society. You work with the men, you work with one person. So this is the concept which I am talking about. Not work with one person, you work with the whole society. That's what we are preaching.
Can I point out something?
Yes.
I'd just like to point out something. Less than 100 years ago, this city was riven with slums. In fact, we didn't even have national statistics that told us how many people lived in slums until the New Deal period, and therefore did not raise to be a national issue that had to be solved. So there is an important map that we received from slum dwellers and from the experiences of history as to how to address the slums. And this has to do with energizing the local people to help with the mapping and inventorying so that we know what the situation is. If you don't know what the problem is, you don't measure it, you can't manage it. The second thing is to support the informal economies and help them move into the formal economies, because absolutely this is what's working. The third thing is to think about acupuncture, the kinds of things, basic services that can be inserted into the slums. Things like health services, education services, some public space, sanitation, of course, as we already heard. And lastly, to work on transport so that people who are living in different parts of the cities can get to the different parts that they need to get to. So it took a long time to create these slums. They're not going to go away overnight. And we have to remember and be patient, but we have a way forward. We are not hopeless in this situation. And I think that is the message that we need to carry forward. And the other piece is the double problem that we have. We don't want to create any more slums.
Thank you.
You had a question?
Thanks a lot. I did. Matthew Lee, Inner City Press. I didn't know that there was hierarchy at the UN, but thanks for the briefing on behalf of the Free UN Coalition for Access. And I wanted to ask, since we're here, you brought up in this city, the slums, and obviously there's been, so I had two questions about the current and even the past mayor, since this is a pretty well-known city. Recently, since the last time you were here, Michael Bloomberg was named to this UN post of climate change in cities. So I wanted to know, what's your understanding of that? Is that part of can this be part of the idea of making cities an SDG? Also, the change to de Blasio seems to many people see it as a move in the direction that you're talking about of equity. So if, within the bounds of nonpartisanship, if you want to comment on that. And then sort of a little bit more critically, I did see in the booklet, you have your list of sponsors, and it's a very wide-ranging. Obviously, some are businesses, and that's, they're an engine of change. But I wanted to know how they were selected. I noticed that one of the sponsors is GDF Suez, which is a big electrical company. But just cursory research finds that they're, protested for a big hydroelectric dam in Brazil. Various, in Australia, there are other protests. Many companies have protests, but I wanted to know how the corporate sponsors in particular were screened before being listed as a sponsor of this campaign. Thanks.
So which question do you want to answer first?
New York first.
All right. I'm a resident of New York City, so I can speak with some authority, and we have some guests here who visit our city and I think like it very much. At least we hope they like it when the weather is not too bad. At any rate, we're very blessed by the leadership that we have in our mayoral arrangements as well as in our community board arrangements, which is a very inclusive way of creating citizen participation of the decisions that are being made. We had one mayor who moved towards the sustainability issues, which is what Bloomberg did. And don't remember, he took office right after 9/11. The city was in a pretty bad shape there. We weren't quite sure how we would survive and so forth, so you have to take that into consideration. We have moved forward under that leadership of 12 years, but the pendulum swings. Attention needs to be paid to, and I'm sure if you're a resident of New York, you know that affordable housing is absolutely critical. Pre-kindergarten is absolutely critical. After-school activities, absolutely critical. And it is time to deal with those things now without losing sight of the sustainability issues that we're so ingrained in the city's municipal policies today. So I think we have it both ways, and we're very blessed. Now the corporate question.
Okay, first of all, the campaign is a voluntary campaign. We ask, I was fortunate enough to be with Habitat when we actually launched the campaign, and basically we reached out to all the key stakeholders, saying, are you concerned about the future of the city? Are you prepared to contribute to a general discussion, debate, and to move ideas forward? So we reached out to companies, like we reached out to academia, to grassroots organizations, professionals, etc. And these happen to be some of the companies that responded. Right? Now, I'm not going to address any particular case, but the companies that you have here on the first page of the sponsors are some of the biggest providers of basic urban services in the world today, right? They encompass energy, water, sanitation, waste removal, waste recycling, etc. And they are also among the companies in the world that are at the cutting edge of new technologies and new thinking. So I think irrespective of which company might have been subject to protests, where and at which point, the important thing is to engage the dialogue. And I think this is critical, because we cannot move forward on this issue by refusing any party around the table. We have to be inclusive. We have to move together forward. And I can say that after being the chair of this steering committee for the last 5.5 years, that the companies do bring some very good minds to the table, and they also bring the challenges that they are facing. And we need to know what are the challenges that face equally a slum dweller as well as a basic service provider. But coming back to your first question on Kibera, I happen to be fortunate enough to be working with a few of the grassroots organizations in Kibera. And one of the things we need to keep in mind is what has improved in the last 5 years. Because Kibera 5 years ago was really in dire straits. It was 700,000 people without any water, without any sanitation. Today we're seeing some improvement. And that improvement, in the particular case of Kibera, was a sleight of hand. We were able to go from administrative law for the provision of public services to commercial law. So we were able to organize the slum dwellers in Kibera into a cooperative of some sorts under corporate law, and then to sign a commercial contract with water operators, private water operators, under a commercial contract as a willing demander, willing buyer, willing seller. Unfortunately, it's stuck there. We're unable to replicate that across all of the slums in Kenya or in East Africa. Basically because there are vested interests in the provision of basic services. And that's why, coming back to your question, we need to engage dialogue with everybody. Unless everybody is around the table, we will be able to maybe solve the problem for Kibera here, for a slum there, but we have to find scalable global solutions. And I'm convinced the only way we can do that is to have all of the key actors around the same table, talking in the same direction. It's all about improving livelihoods. It's all about improving living conditions, health, etc., everything that we can agree on. So let's agree on a way forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think there is a quick question, but very quick, because I think we are at the end of the session.
Thank you very much. I'm Rose Molokwane from Shakdwellers International. I'm very much interested in listening to our panelists around this issue of the city we need. I think it's a new agenda that has been created. And now I remember in 2000, when the WSSD was taking place in South Africa, the agenda was Millennium Declaration Goals, where they want to get rid of the slums. And then now, at the end of the day, evictions took place. And now,
Thank you very much. Do you have a question?
yeah, a question is, how are we going to influence the cities to really understand this agenda? Because most of the time they just respond by evictions.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you know, our position is against unlawful evictions, and we are keeping as much as we can and in knowledge of the situation, and we try to influence the governments in order to avoid forced evictions and in order to avoid unlawful evictions, which is something that it happens quite often, as you say. This is why precisely we need a change of paradigm in urbanization, because sometimes with the small actions here or there, we are not reaching the point where we can be transformative and really to move towards a more a better urbanization. We all know that in the world there's plenty of resources that we can use, and sometimes even if we follow the financial markets, sometimes they say that there's too much money around. The question is that we need to match the needs with the money that exists. And in that sense, this is why we advocate with this campaign about the awareness about urbanization. That there's a huge opportunity in urbanization, because a good planned and organized city is efficient, it generates livelihood, it generates housing, it generates conviviality, this capacity to live together very different people in peace, which romantically or historically was the highest prize of the city, to live together different peoples in a good condition. And we need to recover this dream. We need to recover the dream of a just city, a prosperous city, a healthy city, a safe city, and you will read some of these concepts here in this booklet that explains very well, due to the problems that you are stating, how important is this task and how long is the way that we will need to go in order to reach the happy end. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we are at the end of our session. As Dr. Joan Clos mentioned earlier, UN Habitat is having a session. It's a launching session at the Ford Foundation at 4 p.m. The session will gather key organizations and personalities to exchange views on the City We Need process leading into the World Urban Forum, the post-2015 Development Agenda, and the Habitat 3 conference. And I understand actually the UN Special Envoy for Cities and Climate Change, Mayor Bloomberg, will also attend. Thank you again.
Thank you.